Have you ever wondered what it would be like to possess a mind so extraordinary that your ideas wouldn't be fully understood for centuries? Imagine sketching designs for helicopters in 1489, creating anatomical drawings more accurate than medical textbooks used today, or developing military technologies that wouldn't see the battlefield for another 400 years. This isn't science fiction. This is the reality of one man who lived over 500 years ago, yet whose genius continues to reshape our understanding of human potential. On April 15, 1452, in a small village near Florence, a child was born who would become history's most extraordinary example of what the human mind could achieve. His name was Leonardo da Vinci, and by the time you finish this video, you'll understand why modern scientists are still trying to decode the secrets of his brain, why his notebooks read like prophecies from the future, and how his approach to learning could revolutionize the way we think about intelligence itself. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. Recent scientific investigations have revealed that we've only scratched the surface of Leonardo's genius. Scientists are currently closing in on his actual DNA through a decades-long genealogical investigation. They've traced his family line across 21 generations, and what they discover about his biological makeup could finally explain how one human being managed to excel in so many different fields simultaneously. And that's not all. Just last year, researchers using advanced ground-penetrating radar uncovered secret tunnels beneath Milan's Sforza Castle that match Leonardo's sketches from 1495 perfectly. For centuries, experts dismissed these drawings as mere fantasy, yet there they were, hidden beneath the earth, proving that even more of his impossible ideas were actually real. The scope of Leonardo's intellectual pursuits was absolutely staggering. We're talking about anatomy, zoology, botany, geology, optics, aerodynamics, hydrodynamics, military engineering, architecture, painting, sculpture, music, and philosophy. But here's the kicker. He didn't just dabble in these fields, he revolutionized them. His approach to knowledge was fundamentally different from everyone else of his era. While his contemporaries relied on ancient texts and accepted wisdom, Leonardo trusted only what he could observe, test, and verify with his own hands. Let me paint you a picture of just how ahead of his time this man really was. In the 1480 seconds, while most people believed the human body worked according to theories written by ancient Greeks, Leonardo was conducting secret dissections by candlelight in hospital crypts. These weren't pleasant affairs. We're talking about the stench of decomposing corpses, the macabre atmosphere of working by flickering flames, and the very real danger of being accused of witchcraft or heresy. By his own count, Leonardo dissected 30 human bodies during his lifetime. 30. Each dissection was an act of scientific rebellion against centuries of medical dogma, and what he discovered through these gruesome investigations completely transformed our understanding of human anatomy. His drawings of the human heart, muscles, and circulatory system were so accurate that medical students today can still learn from them. But perhaps his most remarkable anatomical study involved a conversation with death itself. Picture this scene. Florence, 1506. Santa Maria Nuova Hospital. Leonardo encounters an elderly man who claims to be over 100 years old. They chat through the night, and the old man tells Leonardo something extraordinary, that despite his advanced age, he feels no bodily failure apart from weakness. Just hours later, the man passes away peacefully, without any sign of suffering. Now, in an era when death was typically associated with agony and pain, this peaceful passing fascinated Leonardo, but instead of simply wondering about it, he did what no one else would dare. He dissected the man's body to understand what he called the cause of so sweet a death. What he found revolutionized our understanding of aging. The old man's arteries were dry, shrunken, and withered. Leonardo had discovered arterial hardening, what we now know as atherosclerosis, centuries before it would be formally identified by medical science. To contrast his findings, he also dissected a 2-year-old child and noted that everything was the opposite of the old man. This comparative approach to anatomy was groundbreaking. Leonardo wasn't just cutting up bodies, he was conducting the world's first systematic study of how the human body changes throughout life. But anatomy was just the beginning. Leonardo's obsession with flight represents perhaps his most visionary area of study. His interest began practically enough. He was working as a military engineer and realized that aerial reconnaissance could provide a massive tactical advantage. But once he started thinking about human flight, it became an all-consuming passion. Here's where it gets incredible. Most of Leonardo's early flying machine designs were based on mimicking birds, which seems logical enough. But then, around 1505, he began serious scientific study of actual bird flight, and this is where his genius truly shines. In his Codex on the Flight of Birds, compiled during the same period he was painting the Mona Lisa, Leonardo documented observations about aerodynamics that wouldn't be formally understood until the Wright brothers started their experiments 4 centuries later. He grasped the concept of air as a fluid, a foundational principle of aerodynamics. He understood the relationship between a bird's center of gravity and the center of lifting pressure on its wing. He even described what happens when birds ascend against the wind, essentially describing the modern concept of a stall. Leonardo was observing, understanding, and documenting the physics of flight with nothing but his eyes and his brilliant mind. His aerial screw design, what we might recognize today as a helicopter concept, perfectly demonstrates how his mind worked. He took the principle of an Archimedes screw used for lifting water and asked himself a revolutionary question. If this screw can move through water, why couldn't a similar device move through air? After all, both are fluids, just with different densities. The machine he designed was approximately 4 meters in diameter, constructed with a frame of reeds, supporting a starch-sealed linen covering, all held together with wires. In his notes, he explained that the machine would operate like a screw penetrating the air, creating lift through rotation. In 2022, engineers from the University of Maryland actually built a drone based on Leonardo's design and proved that his calculations were accurate. His principle of the propeller basically works. Now, here's what makes Leonardo's mind truly extraordinary. He wasn't just an inventor or an artist or a scientist. He was something entirely new, a person who could see connections across completely different fields of knowledge. His robotic knight, created around 1495, wasn't just a mechanical marvel. It was based directly on his anatomical studies. He understood human musculature so well that he could replicate it mechanically. This armored automaton could sit up, move its head, wave its arms, and even open and close its mouth. It was controlled by external cables, operated with a hand crank, and internal gear-driven machinery. Leonardo had essentially created the world's first programmable robot, and he did it by combining his knowledge of human anatomy with his understanding of mechanical systems. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Leonardo's genius lies in how his mind actually worked. His famous mirror writing, where he wrote backwards so that his notes could only be read clearly when held up to a mirror, provides a fascinating window into his cognitive processes. Modern neuroscientists studying his handwriting patterns suggest that Leonardo's language skills were localized in the right hemisphere of his brain, which is highly unusual. This unique brain organization might explain how he could simultaneously excel at artistic and scientific pursuits that typically require different types of thinking. While most people have language processing in their left hemisphere, Leonardo's apparent right hemisphere dominance could have allowed him to integrate visual, spatial, and linguistic thinking in ways that were literally impossible for other people. The evidence for this is everywhere in his work. His anatomical drawings aren't just scientifically accurate, they're breathtakingly beautiful. His engineering designs aren't just functional, they're elegant works of art. His paintings aren't just aesthetically pleasing, they demonstrate profound understanding of optics, anatomy, and psychology. Consider Leonardo's approach to military technology, and you'll see this same pattern of revolutionary thinking applied to warfare. Here was a man who was reportedly vegetarian, loved animals, and despised violence, yet he created some of the most advanced weapons concepts of his era. Why? Because he understood something his contemporaries missed entirely, that survival in Renaissance Italy required practical solutions to violent realities, regardless of personal philosophy. His armored fighting vehicle, essentially the first tank design, was created for Ludovico Sforza, Duke of Milan, who was desperately trying to defend against French invasion. Leonardo's solution was brilliantly simple, yet centuries ahead of its time. A wagon covered in metal sheets with slits for weapons, propelled by human power from within. The soldiers inside could fire at enemies while remaining completely protected. It was mobile fortress warfare, and nobody else was even thinking along these lines. But Leonardo didn't stop there. His 33-barreled organ gun addressed the fundamental problem of Renaissance artillery, the devastating reload time after firing a single shot. While enemies were reloading their cannons, Leonardo's design allowed continuous fire by rotating between 3 sets of 11 barrels. Fire the first set, rotate to the second while reloading the first, then rotate to the third while reloading the second. It wasn't fully automatic, but it would have provided sustained firepower that could decimate traditional forces. Perhaps most remarkably, Leonardo designed underwater breathing apparatus and diving suits for Venice that would have enabled sabotage operations against enemy ships. Picture leather suits complete with glass goggles and cane breathing tubes connected to air tanks floating on the surface. Venetian soldiers could have walked along the seabed and destroyed enemy vessels from below, completely invisible and unexpected. This wasn't just innovative. It was a completely new form of warfare that wouldn't be seen again until World War II. What makes these military inventions so extraordinary isn't just their advanced nature, but how they demonstrate Leonardo's ability to apply scientific principles to solve complex practical problems even when those applications conflicted with his personal beliefs. He could compartmentalize his pacifist philosophy and apply his genius to military engineering because he understood that knowledge itself was neutral. It was the application that determined moral value. This brings us to perhaps his most psychologically revealing invention, the parachute. Found in the Codex Atlanticus, Leonardo's design shows a pyramid-shaped canopy made of reinforced cloth and wooden poles, 12 arms wide and 12 tall. His accompanying note is matter-of-fact. A man could leap from any height without hurting himself. But here's what's truly remarkable about this design. Leonardo understood air resistance and terminal velocity without any formal physics education. He reasoned from first principles, observing that objects offer resistance to air just as air offers resistance to objects. He watched eagles beating their wings against thin air at high altitudes and understood that moving air could push against billowed sails to propel heavy ships. From these observations, he concluded that properly designed wings could allow humans to rise above air resistance. In 2000, a British skydiver actually tested a replica of Leonardo's parachute design, and it worked perfectly. 500 years later, his intuitive understanding of aerodynamic principles proved completely accurate. This wasn't luck or coincidence. This was pure intellectual power applied to understanding physical laws that wouldn't be formally described until Newton's time. But Leonardo's most mysterious aspect might be his relationship with secrecy and revelation. His mirror writing has puzzled scholars for centuries. Was it an attempt to keep his ideas secret, or simply a practical solution to prevent ink smudging? The evidence suggests something far more interesting. Leonardo used mirror writing for everything: grocery lists, expense records, mundane personal notes. This wasn't about secrecy. It had become completely habitual. Yet when he wrote documents intended for others to read, he wrote normally. This suggests conscious control over his writing direction, which points to something extraordinary about how his brain processed language and spatial relationships. Modern cognitive scientists studying Leonardo's handwriting patterns believe his language processing was localized in his right brain hemisphere, which is extremely rare. Most humans process language in the left hemisphere, but Leonardo appeared to integrate linguistic, visual, and spatial thinking in ways that were neurologically unique. This could explain his ability to seamlessly blend artistic creativity with scientific analysis, seeing patterns and connections that were literally invisible to other minds. This neurological uniqueness becomes even more fascinating when you consider the recent archaeological discoveries validating his work. Those secret tunnels beneath Sforza Castle that researchers uncovered using ground-penetrating radar weren't just matching Leonardo's sketches, They were proving that his supposed fantasy designs were actually implemented. How many other drawings dismissed as impossible might actually exist somewhere, waiting to be discovered? The Leonardo DNA project, currently tracing his genetic lineage across 21 generations, might finally provide answers about the biological basis of his extraordinary abilities. What they're attempting is unprecedented, reconstructing the genetic profile of someone who lived 5 centuries ago, to understand how genetics might have contributed to intellectual capabilities that seem almost superhuman. But here's what makes Leonardo's story so compelling for us today. He wasn't born into wealth or privilege. He was illegitimate, largely self-taught, and started as an apprentice in a Florence workshop. What he possessed wasn't access to secret knowledge or advanced technology. It was an approach to learning that we can still apply today. Leonardo's methodology was revolutionary. Observe everything, question everything, test everything. He trusted nothing that he couldn't verify through direct experience. While his contemporaries studied ancient texts, Leonardo studied reality itself. He dissected corpses to understand anatomy, not because Galen said bodies worked a certain way. He watched birds fly to understand aerodynamics, not because Aristotle had theories about motion. This empirical approach, trusting observation over authority, positioned Leonardo as the world's first modern scientist, centuries before the scientific method would be formally established. He was conducting controlled experiments, making detailed observations, and drawing conclusions based on evidence rather than tradition. And this is where Leonardo's true genius reveals itself. It wasn't that he was smart in many different areas, it's that he understood something fundamental about the nature of knowledge itself. Everything is connected. Anatomy informs art, which informs engineering, which informs military strategy, which informs architecture. Leonardo didn't see separate subjects. He saw one vast, interconnected system of understanding. This holistic approach to knowledge is what allowed him to make breakthrough discoveries that specialists couldn't achieve. His anatomical work improved his painting, which improved his understanding of optics, which improved his engineering designs, which improved his military inventions. Each field of study enhanced every other field, creating a compound effect of learning that accelerated his insights exponentially. The implications of Leonardo's integrated approach to learning become even more remarkable when you consider the physical limitations he was working under. Remember, this was the late 15th century. There were no microscopes, no advanced measuring instruments, no cameras to capture fleeting moments of bird flight. Everything Leonardo discovered, he discovered through pure observational skill and relentless experimentation. Take his studies of water flow, for instance. Leonardo spent countless hours watching rivers, streams, and artificial channels, documenting how water behaves around obstacles, how it creates eddies and currents, how it carves through different materials. But he didn't stop at simple observation. He built models, conducted experiments with dyes to trace water movement, and developed mathematical principles to describe fluid dynamics. These weren't abstract academic exercises. Leonardo was solving real engineering problems. When Milan needed better irrigation systems, his understanding of water flow provided practical solutions. When military engineers needed to divert rivers to flood enemy positions, Leonardo's hydraulic knowledge made it possible. He was simultaneously the theoretical scientist and the practical engineer, roles that wouldn't be combined again until the Industrial Revolution. But perhaps the most extraordinary example of Leonardo's methodological genius lies in his approach to human locomotion. He didn't just draw the human body, he studied how it moved. He analyzed the mechanics of walking, running, jumping, and climbing with the same systematic rigor he applied to water flow or bird flight. His studies of human movement led him to insights that modern biomechanics researchers are still validating today. He understood that efficient movement required understanding leverage, balance, and energy distribution. His drawings show detailed analysis of how muscles contract and extend, how joints rotate and pivot, how the human body maintains equilibrium during complex movements. This knowledge didn't exist in isolation. Leonardo applied these biomechanical insights directly to his engineering projects. His robotic knight moved the way it did because Leonardo understood exactly how human joints and muscles created natural motion. His flying machine designs incorporated principles of balance and control that he learned from studying human movement. Even his architectural designs reflected his understanding of how humans interact with physical spaces. What we're witnessing here is something unprecedented in human history: a single mind that could operate simultaneously as artist, scientist, engineer, inventor, anatomist, and philosopher, with each role enhancing all the others. Modern cognitive science has a term for this kind of thinking: cross-domain transfer. It's the ability to take principles learned in one area and apply them to completely different problems. Most people struggle with cross-domain transfer. We learn mathematics in one context and can't apply it to physics problems. We understand psychology in theory but can't use it practically in social situations. Leonardo seemed to have no barriers between different types of knowledge. Everything he learned became available for application anywhere else he needed it. This cognitive flexibility explains some of his most mysterious achievements. His Mona Lisa isn't just a beautiful painting. It's a demonstration of advanced understanding of anatomy, optics, psychology, and even geology. Look at the landscape behind her. Those rock formations aren't imaginary. They're based on Leonardo's geological studies of how water erosion shapes terrain over time. The famous enigmatic smile isn't artistic intuition. It's applied psychology. Leonardo understood how facial muscles create expressions and how slight variations in muscle tension could create ambiguous emotional states. He was painting human psychology itself, using knowledge gained from dissecting facial muscles and studying emotional expression in living subjects. Even the painting technique demonstrates scientific thinking. Leonardo's sfumato method, the subtle gradations of light and shadow that create that mysterious, almost ethereal quality, was based on his studies of how light actually behaves in atmosphere. He understood that air isn't transparent, that particles and moisture create subtle effects on how we perceive distant objects. He was painting physics. This integration of scientific knowledge with artistic creation was revolutionary. Before Leonardo, artists followed established conventions and traditional techniques. After Leonardo, art became a vehicle for exploring and expressing scientific understanding about the natural world. He didn't just change how people painted, he changed what painting could accomplish. But Leonardo's influence extends far beyond art. His engineering notebooks reveal thinking patterns that modern systems theorists recognize as centuries ahead of their time. He wasn't just designing individual machines. He was thinking about how machines could work together, how human operators could interface with mechanical systems, how complex engineering projects could be managed and executed. His designs for automated manufacturing systems, for instance, show understanding of what we now call industrial engineering. He sketched plans for machines that could produce large quantities of identical objects with minimal human intervention. His textile machinery designs anticipated mass production techniques that wouldn't be implemented until the Industrial Revolution. More remarkably, Leonardo understood something that modern technology companies are just beginning to appreciate: the importance of user experience design. His flying machine concepts included detailed considerations of how pilots would control the aircraft, how they would maintain balance, how physical and mental stress would affect performance. He was designing human-machine interfaces 5 centuries before anyone else was even thinking about such concepts. This user-centered approach to design appears throughout Leonardo's work. His architectural drawings don't just show buildings, they show how people would move through spaces, how natural light would affect inhabitants' daily rhythms, how ventilation systems would maintain air quality. He was thinking about the human experience of built environments in ways that wouldn't become standard practice until the modern era. The military applications of this thinking were particularly advanced. Leonardo's fortress designs incorporated psychological warfare concepts that military strategists wouldn't formally develop until centuries later. He understood that the appearance of defensive capabilities could be as important as actual defensive strength. His castle designs used visual intimidation, creating the impression of overwhelming defensive power that could deter attacks without actual combat. His siege warfare innovations demonstrate similar psychological sophistication. Leonardo designed siege engines that were as much about terrifying enemies as destroying fortifications. He understood that breaking enemy morale could be more effective than breaking enemy walls. His designs incorporated elements specifically intended to create psychological impact, sounds, visual effects, unexpected capabilities that would demoralize opposing forces. But perhaps most remarkably, Leonardo was thinking about what modern military theorists call asymmetric warfare. His underwater diving suits weren't just tactical innovations. They represented a completely new strategic approach. Instead of meeting enemy forces directly, Leonardo's designs enabled surprise attacks from unexpected directions using capabilities enemies couldn't anticipate or counter. This strategic thinking appears in his civilian engineering projects as well. His canal systems weren't just about moving water efficiently, EVLs. They were about creating economic advantages that could shift political power. His road designs weren't just about transportation. They were about enabling rapid military movement and commercial development that could transform regional dynamics. Leonardo understood that engineering wasn't just about solving technical problems. It was about reshaping social and political realities. His projects were simultaneously technological and strategic, solving immediate practical needs while creating long-term advantages for his patrons. He was thinking systematically about how technological capabilities could influence historical outcomes. This macro-level thinking, combined with micro-level precision, created a unique perspective that modern researchers are still trying to understand. Leonardo could simultaneously focus on tiny anatomical details and vast hydrological systems, on individual brush strokes, and comprehensive urban planning on specific mechanical components and entire transportation networks. Recent discoveries continue to validate this extraordinary scope of capability. Those underground tunnels in Milan weren't just defensive structures, they were part of an integrated system that included water management, waste disposal, emergency evacuation routes, and covert military movements. Leonardo was designing comprehensive infrastructure solutions that wouldn't be attempted again until modern urban planning emerged in the 20th century. The tunnels also reveal something fascinating about Leonardo's project management abilities. Coordinating the excavation and construction of such extensive underground networks required logistics capabilities that historians had never attributed to Renaissance engineers. Leonardo was apparently managing complex construction projects while simultaneously pursuing his artistic commissions, scientific research, and invention activities. This multitasking ability challenges our understanding of human cognitive limitations. Modern productivity research suggests that task switching reduces efficiency and increases error rates, yet Leonardo seemed to thrive on managing multiple complex projects simultaneously, with each project enhancing his capabilities in all the others. The key might lie in how Leonardo organized his knowledge. His notebooks reveal a non-linear thinking style that modern cognitive scientists associate with highly creative individuals. Instead of pursuing topics sequentially, Leonardo would work on multiple problems simultaneously, allowing insights from one area to illuminate challenges in completely different domains. His mirror writing might have been part of this cognitive strategy. Writing backwards required constant spatial reasoning and mental rotation, activities that stimulate right brain processing associated with creative and integrative thinking. Leonardo might have been literally exercising his brain for enhanced cross-domain problem-solving every time he wrote notes. This suggests something profound about the nature of genius itself. Leonardo's extraordinary capabilities might not have been just natural gifts. They might have been the result of deliberate cognitive training that enhanced his brain's ability to make connections across different types of knowledge. He was essentially creating his own advanced education system, one designed to maximize intellectual flexibility and creative problem-solving ability. The implications for modern learning are staggering. If Leonardo's methods could be understood and adapted for contemporary education, we might be able to develop human intellectual capabilities far beyond what we currently consider normal. The Leonardo DNA project might provide biological insights, But Leonardo's notebooks provide methodological insights that could be immediately applicable. His approach to observation, experimentation, and knowledge integration represents a learnable system for maximizing human intellectual potential. The question isn't whether we can all become Leonardo da Vinci, it's whether we can learn from his methods to become more capable versions of ourselves. And this brings us to perhaps the most important aspect of Leonardo's legacy. He wasn't just an exceptional individual, he was a proof of concept for human potential itself. Everything he achieved was accomplished using the same basic cognitive equipment that every human possesses. The difference was in how he used it. Leonardo's true genius wasn't superhuman intelligence, it was a superhuman approach to learning and thinking that amplified ordinary human capabilities to extraordinary levels. And if his methods can be understood, they can potentially be taught, learned, and applied by anyone willing to adopt his revolutionary approach to knowledge and discovery. The modern world is finally beginning to understand just how revolutionary Leonardo's thinking actually was, and the implications are absolutely mind-blowing. Contemporary neuroscientists studying his notebooks have identified cognitive patterns that didn't appear in other thinkers until centuries later. His approach to problem-solving demonstrates what researchers now call systems thinking, the ability to see complex interconnections between seemingly unrelated phenomena. But here's where it gets really interesting. Leonardo's most profound insights came not from studying individual subjects in isolation, but from recognizing the fundamental principles that governed multiple domains simultaneously. When he studied the flow of blood through human arteries, he wasn't just advancing anatomy, he was developing principles of fluid dynamics that he would later apply to designing canal systems and understanding atmospheric currents around his flying machines. This wasn't accidental. Leonardo deliberately sought out these connections. His notebooks reveal a systematic approach to finding universal principles that could be applied across different fields. He would spend hours observing water spiraling down drains, then apply those same spiral patterns to understanding hair curls in portraits, air turbulence around wings, and even the arrangement of leaves around plant stems. What Leonardo had discovered, centuries before modern science would formalize it, was that nature operates according to consistent mathematical and physical principles that appear at every scale and in every context. The same forces that shape galaxies also shape whirlpools. The same geometric patterns that govern crystal formation also appear in flower petals and architectural designs. This recognition of universal patterns gave Leonardo something that no other thinker of his era possessed: the ability to predict how principles would behave in untested situations. When he designed his aerial screw, he wasn't guessing about how it might work. He was applying proven principles of fluid dynamics to a new context. When he created his robotic knight, he was transferring verified understanding of human biomechanics to mechanical systems. But Leonardo's methodology went beyond pattern recognition. He developed what modern cognitive scientists call analogical reasoning to an unprecedented degree. He could take a principle operating in one domain and systematically adapt it to solve problems in completely different areas. This wasn't metaphorical thinking. It was rigorous, scientific transfer of validated knowledge across disciplines. Consider his approach to understanding human vision. Instead of simply accepting traditional theories about how eyes worked, Leonardo conducted systematic experiments with light, mirrors, and lenses. But he didn't stop with optics. He applied his discoveries about light behavior to improve his painting techniques, enhance his architectural lighting designs, and even develop better military signaling systems using reflected sunlight. Each application deepened his understanding of the underlying principles, which in turn enabled more sophisticated applications. Leonardo was creating what modern learning theorists call compound knowledge, understanding that grows exponentially because each new insight enhances all previous knowledge. This compound effect explains how Leonardo could achieve expertise in so many different fields. He wasn't learning separate subjects. He was building an integrated knowledge system where every new discovery amplified his capabilities across all domains. His anatomical studies made him a better engineer. His engineering work made him a better artist. His artistic observations made him a better scientist. The psychological implications of this approach are staggering. Modern research on expertise suggests that achieving mastery in even one field requires approximately 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. Leonardo achieved mastery in multiple fields simultaneously because his learning method created synergistic effects that accelerated skill development across all areas. But perhaps most remarkably, Leonardo's integrated approach to knowledge solved a problem that still challenges modern thinkers: the tendency for specialization to create blind spots. When experts focus exclusively on their narrow domains, they often miss insights that would be obvious to someone with broader perspective. Leonardo's broad knowledge base allowed him to see solutions that specialists couldn't recognize. His military engineering innovations came from applying biological principles that warfare experts didn't understand. His anatomical discoveries resulted from artistic observation techniques that medical scholars didn't possess. His flight design succeeded because he combined aerodynamic insights with mechanical engineering knowledge that no single specialist commanded. This interdisciplinary advantage becomes even more significant when you consider the practical constraints Leonardo was working under. He didn't have access to specialized laboratories, advanced instruments, or teams of research assistants. Everything he accomplished was achieved through individual observation, experimentation, and reasoning. Leonardo da Vinci stands as history's ultimate proof that human potential extends far beyond what we typically imagine possible. His genius wasn't supernatural, it was methodical, learnable, and revolutionary. Through systematic observation, relentless experimentation, and integrated thinking, he demonstrated that extraordinary achievement comes not from superhuman ability, but from a superhuman approach to learning. 5 centuries later, as we continue uncovering his buried innovations and decoding his cognitive methods, one question remains. If Leonardo could achieve all this with Renaissance tools and a curious mind, what could you accomplish by adopting his revolutionary approach to knowledge today?